The blonde bombshell. She was one of Hollywood's hottest stars. Her rise, her fall, and her comeback. Next on Christopher Closeup.
Christopher Closeup, a look at the people who are shaping tomorrow's world today.
Hello, welcome to Christopher Closeup. I'm Father John Couture. In 1941, in her very first movie, our guest sang "Arthur Murray Taught Me Dancing in a Hurry," and she was an overnight star.
By 1950, she was on the cover of Time. She was Fred Astaire's partner in Let's Dance and star of the blockbuster film Annie Get Your Gun.
And then it all began to slip away. In the 1960s, she played Las Vegas and began to rely on pills and alcohol to get her through her nightclub act.
By 1973, her health, physical and emotional, was nearly destroyed. But that year also marked the beginning of a new life. I'm Jean Glynn. Please welcome to Christopher Closeup, Miss Betty Hutton. Betty, it's wonderful to have you with us.
Thank you, Jean.
Can you go back to 1940 and tell us what that Hollywood was like when you got there?
Well, when I got there, it was super. I was just 19 years old, and so it was like a wow world. And I had always, since I was a little girl, been in, a fantasy world because my mother was an alcoholic. And so from 3 years old on, she sold booze in those days. And it was called a blind pig. That was what they called them. That's what you had in your house. You made bathtub gin, and you had home brew. So all the guys that worked around there, frequented our houses. So from 3 years old, my mother was playing the guitar, and I was singing. Black bottom, she's got 'em. And I started, and they passed a hat, and I started making money. And my mother, being alcoholic, anything I could raise extra was terrific, So that's when it all started. But then it was fun. And my whole aim in the beginning was to save my mother's life. And I really thought that if I could become a star, and the word star came to me because my mother took me to see Al Jolson in the first movie where there was a little talking, it was silent and talking. And she said, I looked at the screen and said, I'm going to be a tar. I couldn't even say star. That was my way out. And I knew that I got applause when I sang. And to me, that was love, and it was approval, and I was on my way. So I knew I could get my mother better if I could make enough money to get us out of the ghetto of Michigan. And that's what I started to do. And my sister was alcoholic by the time she was 9. And that all was not any part of my life in the beginning, just get my mother better. So by 13, I had won a contest with Vincent Lopez, and I went with the Lopez Band, and within weeks I was in New York City. And by 14, I was starring on Broadway.
You were with Vincent Lopez at 13?
At 13, I won an amateur contest.
Oh my goodness.
And the prize was to go with the band all over the country, and that's what I did. And I took my mother and my sister with me. And I thought, we're on our way. And I had to kind of hide my mother in the background because, the drunken things that went on were very tough for a little kid to deal with. But I think I was born 40. I don't really, truly remember being a child. And I think that was part of the problem that finally hit me. But anyway, we got to New York and things really rolled. And to make a long story short, I did 2 Broadway shows by the time I was 19. The last one was with Ethel Merman. And then Buddy DeSilva was the producer of that. And he became the head of Paramount Studios. And at the time, I had one big number in Panama Hattie, and Ethel Merman took it out opening night. And I said, oh, and I ran to Buddy DeSilva, and I said, I'm not going on. And, through my first temper tantrum, he said, Betty, I know this sounds cruel to you, but that number was too hot to handle, and she's protecting herself, and it's in her contract. And, fist fight, he said, Betty, I'm going to become head of Paramount Studios, and if you won't leave the show, I promise to bring you to Paramount. And I swear to God, that's how the deal was made, like that.
Isn't that something?
So he went out to Paramount, and I was in the show 1 year exactly, and I went out to Hollywood, and the rest, it started to happen. And it was so exciting. Oh, and I wanted to tell you, when we got on the train to go, my first with Lopez, I thought, now, this is the beginning of my mother getting better. But you know what happened, which I should have known then, this was the key to it all. She didn't stop drinking. She went from beer to scotch. And that's as far as I got her until I was 20 years old. I never saw my mother draw a sober breath. But in the meantime, I got Marion with the Lopez Band, and then I got her with Glenn Miller. And so all that went terrific, but they didn't stop drinking. And that was never a problem with me. So I got to Hollywood, and then I think the gates of hell opened right about then, because they throw out a red carpet there, and everything you do is okay as long as you get to the set on time. They literally okay everything. And with someone my age, I had really never had, you know, a fun to go to a party and do all the things kids do. So married men came into my life. That's the first thing that started, these real groovy looking guys saying, you know, we're going to hand you the world. And of course, all you have to give them is your soul. And that's what started to happen. I didn't have a mother to stop me. I had nowhere to go.
You were not aware while this was happening to you of what was happening to you at that time?
No. You know, what comprehension could I have coming from the background where everything was okay? There was, my mother slept with everybody. I saw it all from 3 years old on. To me, that was a way of life. And we lived in a tenement house, remember, where it all went on. You know, rape, murder even. I mean, what kind of values can I have? I was just lucky in that certainly at the time when I was 9, I stumbled into my first Catholic church, literally stumbled in, and I begged those nuns to let me stay. And they used to hide me in their robes, and they taught me the catechism. So that, it started way back, you know. Anyway, in Hollywood it all went wrong for me because everything was allowed. And I already knew all the wrong rules. And so it started. I went with a married man for 4 years. He was a very important married man. It was all, shh, don't tell anybody. And so my mother, when I was 20, God answered the first prayer, though she did. She had like a seizure, and she could never touch another drop of liquor from 20 years old on. So at least my mother got better, and I think that's when I started to get sick. You know, because I could do anything now. She was okay.
No limits, right?
No limit, right. So all the stops were out, and I really started to live it up. And then when this man dumped me, and there's no fancy word for that, I left and I wanted to go overseas, and that's when I first went to Europe with Eisenhower, and I think that was my first kind of a breakdown. And I met Ted Briskin on my way, and just like that, came back and married him. Just to show that man that somebody would marry me. Because, see, nobody loved me, Jean, Father. Do you understand? Nobody loved me. And so when this stops, you die. And that's what started to stop. You know, there wasn't so much applause as I got older. You know, I wasn't so cute anymore. All the mistakes were catching up with me. So I got married, and I had 2 children. And when I reached about 39, things just started to slow down for me. And the nightmares began to hit, because when the picture career was over, I went to the stage again, which was, of course, my first love. But now I was terrified of it, and I started taking pickup pills for courage. And then from pickup pills, I went to downers, because I was so high, I couldn't come down to sleep. And it got to be I wouldn't sleep more than 2 or 3 hours. And so the whole life just plain caught up with me. All the sinning, of course, sin catches up, because if you live in sin, you're going to go down with it. And that's just what happened. I went down to the bottom. And then I started trying to kill myself. And then just a few years ago, thank God. And I watched your show. I wanted to tell you that right now. I watched your show when I was very, very sick. And I wasn't a Catholic. And it was the only thing that gave me a little courage. So I've always felt like God had his hand on me a little bit. Just a little bit, you know, and all I had to do was wake up. So by wake up, I got to New England, and I was doing a show, and I tried to kill myself, and they took me to an alcoholic center, because that's where they took you off of pills.
Now, had you been, while you were on the pills, you had also been drinking, right?
Oh, yeah, with it, because it makes the pills work better, Jean.
Had you drawn any connection with your pills and alcohols to your mother and your sister at this point?
No, I hadn't. I really hadn't, because, see, alcohol was never a problem with me. Pills were new, but what I learned, and my mother got hooked on pills, which I didn't know. She gave me the first pill, but we didn't connect it with, it was a hooking thing, you know, because I said, Mother, I'm tired. I can't go on. And the mob were standing there saying, oh, yes, she's going on, because I got $100,000 a week, you know. I said, Mother, I can't. I'm exhausted. She gave me a pill. And I know my mother didn't mean that. It's harmful to me. But that, I thought, wow, this is the answer to it all. I have the courage to get out there. There was no fear. Can you believe for the first time in my life I wasn't scared? Because that pill did it. I came off, I said, Mother, that's it. Because she worked with me backstage. Never again am I going to have any fear. One pill, that's it. Well, one pill led to 2 to 3, and pretty soon you're looking for something stronger. I went to a shot of Dexedrine with some of the downer in it. Oh, it was like euphoria, you know. It was, and then I understood, I think, only in my getting better with Father, that was my mother's problem with alcohol does that, but it never did that for me. The only reason I took alcohol was to make the pills work better, faster. It could have killed me, of course.